Yeah, good morning both. Let's bring you the latest then on what we know so far about the situation on the ground in Iran, where protests have really been ripping through the country in recent months, since around December of last year, and now growing in significance and in strength really in recent weeks. All started from anger back in December over a crashing economy and a collapsing currency. But that has now turned into something much bigger, much more significant. Now calls for the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and the end of the regime itself. Now, here in the UK, meanwhile, protests have also been taking place over the weekend. Sir Keir Starmer, alongside a number of other European leaders in France and in Germany too, saying they are deeply concerned about the situation. But what was first an Iranian issue is now quickly becoming a global one, marked most notably by Donald Trump, who has stepped into the situation. He says that Iran faces a significant threat and a significant hit, he says, if Iran continues to, in his words, kill any more protesters. Here's what he had to say.
We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Well, the regime has pushed back in force to the protests overnight. In fact, just estimates of around 500 people killed in those protests and demonstrations so far. Also, thousands others arrested. Donald Trump, as I say, stepping in, warning Iran that it will be hit very hard if any further violence continues. And that really has changed the game. It now means that Iran isn't just dealing with protesters on its own streets, but also at risk of dragging the US into the situation too. And that is why in recent days we've heard reports that the internet has been blacked out, phone lines have been cut, all in an attempt by Tehran and its rulers to prevent any videos, any footage of shootings and killings from getting out. Now, it means that as the streets continue to boil away in Iran and Washington weighs up its next move, we're waiting to see just how much further the situation will develop and just how serious the situation may get in the weeks ahead.
There's nothing more important than keeping your money and your identity safe online. And with so many VPN options available, choosing the right one can be pretty daunting. But this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, is making the choice easier for GBNews viewers. ExpressVPN is offering up to 75% off, plus 4 extra months free. That's top-level security from just £2.49 a month, and you're covered by their 30-day money-back guarantee. So just click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code now. Remember, when you're online, you are often sharing personal data, so hackers can steal your information, your passwords, your photos, and your bank details in just seconds. But ExpressVPN encrypts your connection, making it virtually impossible for hackers to access your personal information. So why choose ExpressVPN? Well, it couldn't be easier to use. With just one click, you are protected. And ExpressVPN uses military-grade AES 256 encryption, which is the same standard trusted by the US government to guard their classified information. With their new tiered plans, you can protect up to 14 devices at once and manage passwords securely. Live chat support is available 24/7, and it typically connects you in under a minute with a real person. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to get up to 75% off ExpressVPN, plus 4 months extra for free. Start protecting yourself today with ExpressVPN.
Okay, Sam Francis, thank you very much for bringing that to us. Well, for a further assessment now, let's speak now to the former Conservative MP and British Army officer, Bob Seeley. Thanks for joining us this morning, Bob. What's your assessment of what we're seeing happening in Iran?
Morning, Eamon. Morning, Ali. I think these are historic days, and it was incredibly disappointing to see so much of the old mainstream media pick it up so slowly. And well done to GB News for actually being on the ball, much more so than others. These are historic historic events, you're probably looking at, if not this time, then certainly next time, the overthrow by the Iranian people of this despicable Islamicist regime, which has plagued their country for nearly 3 decades. So these are great and extraordinary events. And I strongly suspect there's a lot more than 500 people who've been killed, because this is a brutal regime and they will have no qualms about killing their own people, as they have done over a series of protests and smaller scale uprisings over the past 15 years.
But Bob, sad though that is, shocking though that is as well, isn't the truth, my friend, that nobody cares, and the only reason we care is if America cares or Britain cares or Russia cares, and it's all over oil? Oil will play a part in this.
Well, I don't, Eamon, with respect, I don't buy that analysis. And actually, oil can sometimes be a valuable factor, so it doesn't have to be negative. I think a lot of people care, especially in the Middle East. Iran has been behind so much of the violence in the Middle East in the last 20 years because of its control of its proxy paramilitary sort of semi-conventional armies and political groups, be it Hezbollah in Israel, be it Hamas, be it Islamic Jihad, be it Shia families in Bahrain, be it the various groups that it runs in Iraq. So actually a lot of people care, because if you take away the mullahs of Tehran out of the equation in the Middle East, you're much more likely to find a situation where Saudi and the UAE and other countries can lead the Arab world and the Muslim world. And, you know, Iranians are Shia and Persian, slightly different, but they can lead most of the Middle East into a long-term peace with Israel. And that's what you're looking at. And that's what the mullahs, especially in the last 10 years, have been desperately trying to avoid. So this is very important for that part of the world, and actually important for the wider world as well.
And Bob, how likely, if at all, do you think it will be that there'll be some sort of US intervention? And what do you think the options on the table are looking like?
Yeah, I mean, one shouldn't get sidetracked, Ellie. This is fundamentally about the Iranian people trying to overthrow a regime which has brutally oppressed them. So that is the story here. And yes, you know, there may be some US action. It doesn't have to be military. They don't have to bomb targets. It could be working with the NSA and potentially GCHQ, if our government actually wanted to step up to the mark in forcing open the internet, or finding ways for people to communicate, all those tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people on the streets, finding a way for them to communicate with each other so that they can coordinate or start to coordinate their action. Because what the regime wants to do is, as it's done in the past, pick off the ringleaders, isolate people, and then deal with these protests violently, one at a time. So potentially the most useful thing the US and its allies, if they wanted to could do, would be to help open up the internet and help people communicate within Iran with each other, so that everyone can see what is happening.
Bob, what is happening? What would you say the chances of an overthrow may be?
Yeah. I think better, I think more likely than they have been, but it's still not, I think it's still very much in the balance, for the simple reason that if you look at the factors that tend to make up a successful revolution, a divided regime is an important part of that. And at the moment, whilst you have reports of some police and low-level security officials taking part in the protests because they're fed up with their regime, the Iranian regime as well, the regime at a senior level still seems to be united. They still seem to have their fanatical paramilitary groups on side. So this is by no means a given. But I think what we can say is that the protests are larger and much more substantive than they have been at any time in Iran's recent past. And if these don't succeed in overthrowing the regime, it will be extraordinarily weakened afterwards. And I think you're looking at the end of the Iranian regime. Whether it goes next week or in 18 months' time, this regime now has a limited lifespan. And that is a good thing for the world, and actually a good thing for Britain, considering that we, along with Israel, along with the US, are their trinity of enemies. And really, we don't have to be bombing Iran, but there are things that we can be doing. And I hope this government is, because I've been incredibly underwhelmed by the government response to this problem. We should be congratulating those people in fighting for their freedom. And I think with some news organizations and some governments, if it's not anti-Israel or anti-Trump, there seems to be limited interest. This is a great and historic event, and we need to make sure that we are on the side of good people here.
Are you on the side of Bob Seeley or not on this one? Have your say this morning. Register what you have to report on, and we will reflect that throughout the programme today. Bob Seeley, we'll leave it there. Bob's a former MP and a former army officer. Thank you very much indeed.
Good morning. Good morning. No forgiveness.
Freddie, what's your assessment of what we're seeing in Iran?
Well, I think obviously the key question on everyone's lips is, will Donald Trump intervene? Because he has shown a willingness to intervene in recent months and weeks, particularly on Christmas Day. I think has gone almost unnoticed, but he bombed Nigeria in Christmas Day in order to try and help alleviate pressure on Christians there. He, of course, had the Venezuela intervention. And it's fair to say that when it comes to Iran, he has shown willingness before. He bombed the nuclear facilities last summer. And another thing worth noting is that he met Netanyahu, the Israeli leader, in the betwixt Christmas and New Year period. And it's thought that Netanyahu briefed him on the situation in Iran. He actually, Truth Social, he did a social media post at that time saying, we are locked and loaded and ready to go into Iran. Over the weekend, he said, we have a couple of options, which we were exploring, to intervene militarily. So it will be very interesting in the next few days to see what America and Trump do, because they do have the ability, I think, to potentially take further strikes against the regime and topple it at this precarious moment for the Iranian regime. Whether they do or not is an interesting question.
Do you think we will see a change in regime now? Because we've seen protests before, haven't we? We saw large-scale protests back in 2022. Is this time different? And if we were to see a change in regime, is there any idea of what could follow? Well,
a really interesting part of this story is that it's very hard to tell. And an interesting thing about the internet age, actually, is without internet, and I saw Iranian protesters saying internet is important as bread, is as important as bread. Because without internet, it's very hard to get a clear sense of what's going on in Iran. We get snippets of videos. We have human rights groups reporting that there are hundreds dead. But we don't actually know... It could be many more. We don't actually know the dynamics of these protests. So I think, yes, of course, the Iranian regime has been... People have been talking about the collapse of the Iranian regime for 2 or 3 decades. Mind you, 20 years ago, people were talking about the collapse of the Saudi regime, and look how strong that is now. So you never quite know. But what's certainly true is that this seems to be a real crunch point, because the economy, the Iranian economy, has been so bad for so long. It's ripe for a toppling. Trump senses that, the Israelis sense that, and so now could be that moment. And this started, didn't it, with a protest about the economy, and it's grown into so much more. Yes, well, exactly. It's become a kind of... I mean, the Iranians always say it's foreign agents backing it, but you speak to any Iranians outside of the Middle East, and they will tell you, no, the Iranian regime is ripe for falling. The middle class have been unhappy for a very, very long time. The poor are getting desperately poor. These UN sanctions are really starting to bite. And so that this is a moment where Iran could be taken. And in terms of pressure here at home, especially for Keir Starmer, is it time that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard is prescribed? I find that story a little bit of a sort of sideshow, because, I mean, yes, it probably could be considered a terrorist group. However, most terrorism in the world at the moment, or for the last 20, 30 years, has been carried out by Sunni terrorists, not Shia terrorists. And Iran is obviously Shia. But yes, Iran has the capacity to conduct terrorism all over the world. It has done in the past. So yes, I suppose the Revolutionary Guard should and could be considered terrorists. But I think, how you label things at this stage is not very important. The real question is, will the regime survive in Tehran? Yeah, it's a big question, isn't it? Freddie Gray, thank you very much indeed.